Kyle Rayner, the OG White Lantern, arguably the greatest lantern of all time, but unfortunately, ever since Rebirth, Kyle's just kind of been nerfed, to put it pretty generously, and I'm okay with Kyle in that nerf state, but it seems that recently something has changed for good old Kyle Rayner, and it appears that something is indeed going on with him that's beyond the average lantern once more. So sit back and let me explain to you guys what the heck is going on with Kyle Rayner. And in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe as well, and you can even become a Theromax Corps member. It's a group of people who pretty much help fund me outside of even just a like and subscribe. It costs less than a coffee a month, and it really helps me produce more content like this. So if you want to help me out, that'd be dope. And with no further ado, let's get into it, homies. Okay, so let's start off with the basics for all of y'all who may not be too aware of Kyle Rayner. You're more than welcome to check out my origins for Kyle Rayner video, which I'm sure I'll have pop up here in the right corner or something along those lines. But to give you the basics, Kyle Rayner back in the 90s was essentially the reboot Green Lantern. And he was doing things that pretty much everybody considered impossible throughout his entire run. The guy was a legend and really was next gen. And that was solidified, I mean, up into the 2000s, where he basically had survived all sorts of events like 0 Hour and pretty much every villain the universe could throw at them, including like Darkseid's Sun and even Parallax Hal Jordan. And so he had been through quite a bit, done the impossible a few hundred times, you know. He was trying to be the stand-in for Hal Jordan, and everybody can respect that. But after Hal Jordan returned, post 2004-2005's Green Lantern Rebirth, Kyle kind of lost his place in terms of significance because the GOAT was back. Hal was back. And so as time goes on, he's kind of relegated to the Green Lantern Corps series for a considerable amount of time until down the way whenever we hit the New 52. And once we hit the New 52, clearly the people writing it at the time had different plans for Kyle Rayner. Plans for being the greatest outside of maybe just willpower, something to make him unique. Something to make him beyond just another Green Lantern or a legendary Green Lantern, and something to define him as different than Hal Jordan. They decided to make him basically the Avatar, but instead of the elements, we chose to go with emotions in this situation, and Kyle managed to slowly but surely master all the different emotions that existed inside of DC. That, of course, being the traditional 7 with black and white on top of that. This is obviously a feat that is beyond pretty much anybody. To give you an idea, nobody else has ever done this inside of canon, at least as far as we've seen so far, of like naturally becoming a White Lantern. That massive amount of power led him to doing all sorts of things, like, I mean, flying through the source wall, grabbing the life equation on the other side, altering the source itself on the other side. Kyle was doing all sorts of things. Like, he has some of the best scaling inside of all of DC whenever it comes to like altering the source. It's just absolutely crazy. But just like all great stints in power, unfortunately he wound up giving up some of those powers, fracturing his own ability down into 7 separate rings, and then later on he winds up heading into that rebirth story I was talking to you guys about. So what possibly could have happened to Kyle Rayner to cause himself to become a Green Lantern again and incredibly nerfed from being a White Lantern? Well, it's quite a tragedy, and DC has never been really straightforward with us. I have an entire theory video out on this at one point in time, because it's pretty convoluted, but basically, well, not on top of the world, but definitely being up there. It's under the assumption that he tried to resurrect all of the Blue Lanterns, and some being stood in the way and auto-negs him. And it shatters his white ring into a bunch of other rings, which it totally wasn't, but I guess we forgot about that. And Kyle is back to being a Green Lantern. So Kyle had this entire era as a White Lantern where he was basically just space emotion Jesus, and really was out there. He was far beyond any individual corps, really just expanding the horizons of what we would thought possible with emotions. And after he becomes, after the old nerf he gets from who we can only assume is Dr. Manhattan, he winds up just roaming around as a Green and is kind of just relegated back into the role he was in the 2000s of being like that Green Lantern Corps member, although he's been featured prominently in pretty much all of the Green Lantern series for the most part. And that brings us to pretty much today. He's been a tertiary character running around ever since the events of Dark Crisis, and of course, just like the rest of the other Green Lanterns, he's kind of thrown to the corners of the galaxy alongside the rest of the OG-GLs, since Lord Premier Tharos, this new villain, is just trying to get them all killed, right? So during one of the first little chapters that we actually get a glimpse of Kyle, he and Joe basically run off to find out what's going on with Lord Premier Tharos, and obviously Kyle winds up joining the little rebellious group that Joe Moline has kind of put together in order to help take down Lord Premier Tharos. And this is when we start getting some really weird throwbacks to that White Lantern era, or at least like the lead up to that White Lantern era, because Kyle seems to be having some sort of problem. Because as Hal Jordan shows up to this resistance that Kyle had joined before, Kyle is like an unstable ball on the ground that's just tweaking about something. And whenever Hal questions it on him, he just like saying, yo, there's something wrong. Like, he's not even speaking full sentences or anything along those lines, talking about how the emotions themselves are wild and no longer being contained as they were before. And it gets even worse whenever like Hal says, yo, we're totally going to fix this, and Kyle's just kind of lost it, bro. He says, good, bro, it needs to be fixed. Like, Kyle is genuinely losing it. He's not even considered useful to the other lanterns on hand. They just have him sitting on the floor to keep him away from whatever it is they're doing. The next time we see Kyle inside of this run, everyone's discussing exactly what their game plans are to destroy Lord Premier Tharos and are heading out to do so, and Hal reaches out to Kyle again. And Hal is still just losing his shit, talking about how the spectrum itself has been splintered and there's no focus on the spectrum itself. And they all decide to leave without him because Kyle in his current state just isn't capable of doing the serious things that they need to do. The next time we come across Kyle Rayner, the entire base that the Resistance is using is raided by the new Source lanterns that are following Lord Premier Tharos. And during them rolling up looking for Kyle Rayner, he basically says the rainbow is a spectrum that's screwed up and he can't grab it, and nobody apparently understands this besides him. Now, this of course is to his knowledge, but we've also seen Hal and Sinestro kind of low-key freaking out about this entire situation, something being wrong with the spectrum. And during that instance, these Source lanterns who roll up, Kyle yells at them to stop. And when he does, he just absorbs all of their Source energies from their rings. He just one-taps them casually. And keep in mind, these figures, these random lanterns, are like Hal Jordan tier, and so that's low-key insane. They even specify, that's odd, their rings and uniforms are all gone. So he's just directly manipulating pretty much everything that they have on them. And since the Resistance itself managed to survive the first assault upon them, we come across the Resistance down the way, and of course Kyle Rayner is in this little Resistance splash as well, but this time it's a little bit different. They're talking about what exactly Lord Premier Tharos is doing, and Kyle interrupts them saying, no, he just needs to control the spectrum. And everybody kind of looks over at Kyle at this point in time, and Kyle is glowing rainbow. He's got like every single color on. Look at this art. It's just absolutely wild. It looks directly like the panel when Sade first had all the rings attached to him. Because he's got like the multicolor action going on. And so what exactly does this mean in the future? We're not entirely sure, but let's add some more context. So this Lord Premier Tharos guy has essentially been destroying any conduit into the emotional spectrum besides the Source lantern, this big lantern battery that John Stewart had created a while back. He has effectively found out that he has to not only have the core, but have a lantern strong enough enter that central lantern battery in order to gain access to the powers that exist there, like on a higher level, to reach more like foundational levels. And he sacrificed pretty much every core member and every other battery that has existed that we are aware of currently. And to truly unlock all the powers of the Source lantern battery, I mean, he could get all the lesser cores, so like hope, greed, willpower, rage, like star sapphires, like love, like all he can manipulate all of those. But the only way he could access like the White Lantern would be like having a White Lantern to sacrifice, right? And so I wonder if Kyle Rayner actually is that person, whether he needs to sacrifice Kyle Rayner as he's ascending back into that White Lantern state, or at least some form of multi-emotional state into the source battery in order to unlock that level of power for himself. And so Kyle Rayner is on quite the emotional journey. But keep in mind, that's just a theory, because anything could be going on with Kyle Rayner right now whenever it comes to this new weird thing that he's doing. But you guys tell me what you think down low. What do you think Kyle Rayner's doing with this new power set, or these new powers, or this new core that he's forming? This might be an entire new core that's popping off. We really don't know. We do know that they're adding a bunch of, or not a bunch, but at least a few new cores in this new run, so I'm really curious to see where it goes. Do you think Kyle Rayner will ascend back into being a White Lantern? Is that something the storyline needs? I think things are looking that direction, but you never know with DC Comics. But let me know what you guys think down low. Be sure to like and subscribe so you guys get more content just like this, so I can hit you with the newest Lantern updates and honestly more cool stuff from DC. And with no further ado, we'll catch you next time, Lanterns. Later.
You'll join my list of dead after I tear you in half. And I laughed at the thought of them controlling me. I'm the ultimate dragon that spawned everything. I resist in the